What is our mission? What are we trying to accomplish? Why do we exist? And when we can clarify those things, then, we can build a company that's not going to waver. It's a fabulous filter to have a mission. And so, I do that with people for their own personal life. And it all came from that experience, being able to see a company from start to $1 billion empire and know that much of that success was based on not just good programming, because in the beginning, if you watched HGTV in the beginning, it was a lot of gingham and doilies. Like it wasn't, we didn't have the money to create these flashy shows. So we just had to hold on to who we wanted to be, what our vision was, and what our core values were. And if we stayed true to that, if we operated with integrity internally, that would shine through externally.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Flow Over Fear podcast, where it is our mission to help you to rise above fear and realize your ultimate potential in leadership and life. I'm your host, Adam Hill, and it is my goal to share with you the human side of high performance. My guests share their experience with fear, anxiety, struggle, challenge, and most importantly, despite all of it, how they rose above it to achieve incredible results. So, if you're ready to rise up, let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Flow Over Fear. Thank you so much for being here today because we have a great show. My guest today is Traci Schubert Barrett, and she is a sought-after international speaker, best-selling author of What If There's More? Finding Significance Beyond Success, and the founder of Navigate the Journey, a leading business and consulting and leadership development firm. As one of the founders of the wildly popular national cable television network, HGTV. Yes, that's right, HGTV. She enjoyed the amazing ride of taking a fledgling idea and turning it into a $1 billion media empire. But after over 20 years in the media industry, Traci began to wonder, what if there's more to our vocational lives than just success? And in a leap of faith, she quit her executive job and went on a soul-searching journey, leading her to create the strategic life map process. With a master's in professional psychology and over 30 years of business expertise, Traci specializes in coaching C-suite executives and business leaders, helping them break free from living on autopilot and discover purpose and clarity for the future chapters of their life. Traci, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
What an exciting resume you have. I mean, just as one of the founders, I know a lot of people who listen to this are probably fans of a lot of the programming that happen that occurs on HGTV. I mean, it's part of our daily lives. And personally, I just want to thank you for maintaining the integrity of the nature of the show, which is home and garden television. I think, and actually keeping it home and garden television. I see a lot of these channels and just moving over to Aliens or like History Channel doing car shows. And maybe I'm speaking out of turn here, but I just wanted to thank you for that. I see that everywhere. So.
Well, it is so amazing that you bring that up. And I think it says something about your own business acumen to notice that. Because when we were starting HGTV, our founder, Ken Lowe, he kept saying that over and over again, which is we need to stay true to the promise of cable television. Mm-hmm. And the promise of cable television back in the late 80s and early 90s was to create networks that were devoted and dedicated to one niche. Right. So like you had the news networks, you had, back when we launched, there weren't that many. Cable was like the new frontier, much like the internet is today. And we wanted to be different. We wanted to stay true to home and garden programming. And it's not that easy. I even mentioned this in my book about how you can be tempted by things are going to bring ratings because ratings brings advertisers and brings money. Mm-hmm. And so it's tempting for networks to run reruns of Golden Girls or Friends or whatever it is that they can get the rights to, because that's going to give easy viewership and easy money. And I think it's a great lesson for any entrepreneur. When you're starting a business and trying to launch a business. And the early years of HGTV were not glamorous or easy. We were selling something that didn't exist, basically, and trying to convince people that was going to be great. And yet there were cable networks all around us failing and going out of business. So there was no guarantee. But because we stayed true to our mission and vision, I think this scrappy small group of people who tried to get this network off the ground persevered. And I think the lesson for me as an entrepreneur and HGTV was the most amazing training ground as an entrepreneur. And I've used those same techniques in our current business, Navigate the Journey, but also as we coach other companies that stay true to your mission, figure it out, decide who you want to be, and stay true to that. And I think that is the secret sauce of HGTV. Now, HGTV, which grew into more of a conglomerate of networks, Scripps Networks with Food Network and Travel Channel, all that, has been bought and sold a couple of times. So who knows what the future holds, these huge media companies. I don't know. I hope it stays true because, it's kind of like my baby. You're like looking at it and you're thinking, please don't mess it up. But I would say the original group that started HGTV definitely believed in what you noticed.
Yeah. So and that's reassuring. And I mean, at least up until this point, it seems like they're staying true to that mission. I mean, I see a lot of programming that's still expanding in that direction, and no ghosts yet or haunted houses or anything like that.
Exactly.
But yeah, and I'd love to dig into your story and how you got started there, how that all worked out. And just to kind of tie a knot on that, because you mentioned something that was interesting regarding entrepreneurship and staying true to your mission. So why do you think it is that the bigger conglomerates, so to speak, go for is it just because it's easy to say, hey, let's talk about aliens and what if kind of questions or things like that? Or are they doing it wrong? Or both?
Yeah. Well, I think when it comes to business and even to our lives, and I love talking about this and writing about it, we as Americans will just, talk about where we are and what country we live in. We just have kind of grown up in this world where success is measured by these very common metrics of wealth and fame and title, prestige. And so companies are really getting after the bottom line, right? To be profitable. And I get that. Like, profits are great because they mean you get to still exist. And so many businesses fail. So we do have to watch the bottom line. We do need to run companies that are effective and efficient and operate well. But we also need to run companies that are healthy. And we need to run companies that are going to have longevity and legacy. And those companies are ones that really get behind. What is our mission? What are we trying to accomplish? Why do we exist? And when we can clarify those things, then, we can build a company that's not going to waver. It's a fabulous filter to have a mission. And so, I do that with people for their own personal life. And it all came from that experience, being able to see a company from start to $1 billion empire and know that much of that success was based on not just good programming. Because in the beginning, if you watched HGTV in the beginning, it was a lot of gingham and doilies. Like, it wasn't, we didn't have the money to create these flashy shows. So we just had to hold on to who we wanted to be, what our vision was, and what our core values were. And if we stayed true to that, if we operated with integrity internally, that would shine through externally. And so those principles, I think sometimes people think, that's like warm and fuzzy and I don't know. But when you're able to talk about it and you have such a fabulous example and such a profitable and well-loved example as HGTV, I think it's a very, powerful tool to kind of convince people like, hey, don't just do this for your company, do this for your life. And and it was part of the joy of HGTV is having an executive staff that really wholeheartedly believed in doing the right thing and staying true to the promise of who we wanted to be, that vision. Because there was no guarantee we were going to survive. I mean,
oh, sure.
You know, it just is never guaranteed for any company, any startup.
Yeah. And your start with HGTV, I mean, now we have 1,000 different channels on cable television with all that sort of stuff. I mean, and I think you started with HGTV back in, is it 1994? Is that right? Yeah.
So before it was on air. So it was just an idea when I was hired, and just kind of still in the putting the pieces together and trying to find programming and, getting the logo, getting the brand together. This is pre-internet. So think about that, that we didn't have a lot of channels to say, hey, this is going to be, something you should love and ask your cable operator to put on the air. We were doing it, old school. Yeah. And eventually, the internet came and that really helped as well to digitally get the message out there. But yeah, you just start one cable operator at a time, one advertiser at a time, one program launch at a time. So, yeah.
Wow. And what was the timeline around that? So you in 1994, what did the landscape look like? Was it, I think CNN was probably already in the mix. Were there the history channels was that already a thing yet?
No. So back then, you had the Turner networks. So Ted Turner was a pioneer of cable, and everybody really looked up to him. He launched CNN, he launched TNT, TBS, and then you had Discovery Channel. I'm trying to think what else. It was, just really a handful of channels that were out there. And I think the reason why a lot of people looked to Ted Turner is because he also wanted to stay very true. Like, he was like, we're going to show news. Like, and back in those days, you'd watch CNN. It was like just news. There was no like flashy talk shows or arguments, or it was just like, we're at the front lines of the Gulf War, Yeah.
Right.
So it was just really kind of delivering that. And I think there were, I believe, about 25 networks that launched at the same time HGTV did at the end of 1994. So we worked all of 1994 to work on advertising, work on distribution, work on programming. Launched the last day of the year, December 31st, 1994. There were about 25 other networks around that time that launched, and only 2 survived. So like us and the History Channel. All the rest eventually went under or just went away. So I love telling that, because I think it really helps entrepreneurs as well to realize, like, it was great that people were trying to break into this new frontier, but it didn't mean that you were going to succeed. And I think when you see huge companies, you just think they just popped into an existence. And I think HGTV was a little bit different because we didn't have a huge distribution arm. We weren't owned by Turner Networks. We didn't have, we had EW Scripts, but they were like local television. And so this was new for even the company that was funding us. So it was an exciting time. And I think I was young enough to be super optimistic and think, well, if it fails, I'll get another job. But to me, this was like my dream, to be in television and to be part of a startup and to be watching people I admired, and I had the best mentors, and it was a fabulous experience.
That's incredible. And what was it about HGTV, out of the many that started in 1994, HGTV and History Channel were the ones that survived. What was it about those 2 in particular that made it? Was it the mission? Was it staying true to that? What made them survive and the others fail?
Well, I think for HGTV, I can't speak as much to history, but I can kind of guess that they did stay true to who they were, at least in the beginning. I think for HGTV, it was, we really believed that people wanted this. Like, that they wanted, because now it's coming to me too, the other networks that were out there, Viacom with MTV, and which, we all grew up on and watching music videos, that was morphing into something different as well, and so, they were becoming more reality program based and a little racier. And so I think, HGTV knew, what, we can find our niche. We believed, and we did a ton of customer research or viewer research and focus groups and all of that, and knew that people wanted something in their house that they could just keep on, that they knew wasn't going to be inappropriate or stressful, that it was also going to, we had what was called the 3 I's: ideas, information, inspiration. Like every single show had to have the 3 I's. And so we knew we could teach, but yet entertain. And people want to learn. And people, who doesn't want their home to be their sanctuary? Yeah. And it's our nest. It's our safe space, and so we just leaned into all of that and we believed it. And so I think the biggest thing that worried us was just somebody bigger coming in and just supplanting us and just saying, we have more money, we have more power, we have more distribution angles. And so we're just going to create the same exact thing and just crush you. And that never happened. So, but that was the only thing. We just kept looking around like, is somebody else going to launch something? And it didn't happen, thankfully. And we got enough traction, enough trajectory going that, we were able to really, really start getting distribution and people finding out about us. And it took a number of years. And we bought the Food Network about 5 years in. And so that also helped because we could do some cross-branding, and we rebranded food and re-strategized food to be more like HGTV, true to the brand, more entertaining, more inspirational. And so, it was a good strategy looking back, thankfully.
Yeah, I think that's helpful because I think a lot of entrepreneurs might have that fear of like, what if the bigger guy comes out with that idea, but it just sounds like the common theme here is staying true to your values, to your mission, and making sure that that's integrated into everything you're doing. And it's funny you mentioned MTV. I saw a funny meme about that earlier, which I think they just celebrated their 40-year anniversary or something like that. And it said, well, happy birthday to MTV celebrating its 40th year. Thank you for 18 years of music. And I thought that was funny.
It's so true. Right. It's so true. Yeah. There is so much fear when you're starting a company, and you have to persevere, and you have to, know who you are, because if you lose that, you're going to make some really bad decisions. If you don't, understand what your vision is, what your mission is, what your values are, you'll make decisions that will, seem like short-term wins, but not long-term gains.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can resonate a lot with that because, and I think that even exists well into, maturity for businesses because, I run currently 100-year-old business, and we went through our own struggles where, and there's these periods of like, where you're challenged by a lot of things. And I feel like that kind of rings true in those moments where there are these like maybe crucible moments where you have to realize like, all right, staying true to your values, making sure that you're doing whatever this is, even regardless of the risks, this is what we exist for. And that will lead to the bottom line. So that's a powerful mission. And if we're keeping that entrepreneurial spirit, that can stick with us. So you must have had that. Starting with something like HGTV, which didn't exist, yet, and it was a brand new kind of medium. You must have had that entrepreneurial spirit even when you started out, especially with going from psychology, like having a psychology degree, if I understand correctly, to getting into television. How did that happen for you?
Well, I actually had a business and marketing telecommunications degree. So I always wanted to get into TV. I thought I was going to be Jane Pauley. And so I went to Indiana University because that's where she went. And it has an amazing media school. It's, one of the top 20 business schools. And so I was like, I'm just going to dive in here, move to a major market. And then I realized, maybe in front of the camera wasn't as much for me. I wanted to do, help build things and do things behind the scenes. And so I pivoted to that. So, I immediately went into television. When I was at HGTV and, it's a small group of people starting something, as with any startup that does really well, you move up the ranks super fast and you get a lot of responsibility that normally you wouldn't get if you're working at a giant media company. And so I became an executive pretty quickly. I had a huge staff. and not a lot of HR support because we were just building that department. I mean, if you can imagine, I was hired with no HR. Like I was, I had my boss interviewed me in her kitchen. I realized that I needed more education. I wanted so desperately to be a good leader, and I had a lot of fear around it. I was thinking, okay, this is happening really fast, and I have these people I'm responsible for. And it's a super stressful, high-powered environment when you're in the media world. And then I just decided, I don't want to go back and get my MBA because I already have a business degree, and I don't, really think that's going to help me in leading people. So I went back and got a professional psychology master at night and on the weekends while I was working at HGTV. So that's how the psychology part came in.
Okay.
And so it was super helpful, though. I think it really helped me be the type of leader that could hear my employees. I knew that sometimes they just want to vent. They're not looking for me to solve. And so I could hear them out and guide them through. And then sometimes, you just being able to read the room better, being able to understand where emotions are coming from and how to get people to a better place. And so I became really interested in leadership and management. I loved it. And that, the giant part of my career at HGTV for almost 2 decades was just leading people, and really through stressful, high stress environment. And so that just kind of became my sweet spot. So when I left, I was able to kind of parlay that into what I'm doing now. And that happened organically. It wasn't like this great plan, but I'm using that experience now to kind of pay it forward, I guess.
Yeah. Well, that's really interesting what you're saying about psychology and business kind of being complementary. And because I actually did it in the reverse. I was a psychology major for my bachelor's and then got my MBA later, but I found kind of the same thing. It was interesting. And I think it's fitting too that your boss interviewed you in her kitchen for HGTV. I mean,
Exactly.
it makes sense.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, and what was your role, or what role did you evolve into at HGTV? What, vice president?
Yeah, so overseeing all the like advertising sales, kind of that area where you're negotiating big contracts, basically, whether that's for advertisers to be on air, for talent to be sponsored. And so you're dealing with basically the biggest funders of the network.
Right.
Okay. So, and then I had a team that worked under me to negotiate those things, or to bring the business to HGTV. So in my role, it ended up being a lot of really just catering to the relationship, a lot of account management, a lot of strategic planning, a lot of, developing leaders within. So we had a lot of executive meetings. We had a lot of events where we were taking, the talent that was on air and the advertisers and going to the HGTV Dream Home, or, but then we'd have these high stress, intense weeks of negotiating the upfront. So, it was a lot of travel. I traveled a lot, and a lot of entertaining, and it sounds super glamorous, and a lot of it was, and fun. And I had an amazing team. Like, I love the people that worked with me and for me. But, it's a lot. It's a big job. And when you have, a family and kids and all of that, it's a lot to juggle. Yeah.
Well, yeah. And it's one thing to, be whining and dining and doing all of this stuff, but to also have the expectations of results. That's a big, that's a big responsibility. And so, and that segues us kind of into like kind of where you're going into now, and what your mission is now. I mean, you spent 20 years in this incredible company, kind of, what people would think of as a dream job. You founded this company that turned into $1 billion organization. You're at the top of the chain, something that many people dream of. But what was the catalyst to make the move into where you're at now? Because I know that there was probably a lot of inner conflict that happened to get you to make the leap.
Yeah. I really just kind of woke up in my 40s, and, I had 2 small kids at home. My husband had a very demanding job. And I just felt like, what is happening? I feel a little I don't feel necessarily unhappy, but I feel restless, and in that I don't have a lot of agency over my life. This is very much pre-pandemic. So, there wasn't this, people working at home and working at, it was still this kind of intense environment. And I just I had been doing it for so long. When you're there in television for over 20 years, you are kind of a little bit on autopilot. And I noticed that a lot of other people felt this way around me, like maybe not necessarily where I was, but just in corporate America in general, especially people that are in they've elevated, they've checked up all the boxes, they've climbed the corporate ladder, and we're all just sort of like going through the motions. And if I had $1 for every time I heard the word golden handcuffs, then I could have retired to Hawaii. But everybody would just toss that around like, oh, it's the golden handcuffs. Oh, I can't leave. Oh, I can't do the thing I want to do.
Yeah.
And I guess I just kept saying to myself, well, what if there's more? What if there's more out there for me? Mm-hmm. And what if there's more to my identity than just HGTV? And what if there's more to my identity than just television or being an executive? Or for that matter, just being a mom? Like, what if there's just more to me and more to what I want? And I tried to wrestle through those questions, but it's hard to wrestle through those questions when you have, hundreds of millions of dollars on, that you're responsible for and a huge staff and all that. I just could not wrap my brain around it. Right. So I decided to leave, which much to the dismay of my bosses and my team, who were completely confused what I was doing. I just was like, I'm going to take a leap of faith, and I'm going to believe that my identity isn't and shouldn't be wrapped up in this, and that I can pave a new path for myself. And I want to figure out what that path should be. And I want to have more control over it and design my life on my terms. I have followed all the rules. I have checked all the boxes. I have achieved. I have made a lot of other people happy, but I really want to figure out what I want. And so, had the fabulous going away party, and, left. And then, of course, the next morning you're feeling like completely naked. And what did I do? And oh my gosh. And talk about fear. I was just like, okay, I did it. It sounded like a really good idea. Now what? Right. And that's when I had to wrestle through so much fear, so much uncertainty, but eventually getting to a place where I could answer some of these key questions, like, how did I get to where I am today? Who am I? Why do I exist? What do I really want? And then start to kind of figure out, where am I going? What are the things that I'm good at? What can I do? And some of that came through self-discovery, and some of it came organically because people were calling me from the industry like, hey, can you coach me on this or help me on that? And I was like, well, yeah, I guess I could. And so, Navigate the Journey just kind of eventually evolved through my executive coaching and my husband doing strategic planning. And we started this company, and I was excited because I was excited to learn or to use all what I had learned, from an entrepreneur perspective, and come alongside businesses and leaders. And, and through that, I kind of, wanted to chronicle all of that in my book. I wanted to write the book that I wish I had. That when I was sitting at my desk at HGTV and feeling like I was on autopilot and feeling stuck and not quite sure if I should stay or go, or how do I even figure that out, I wanted to write a book that people could read and hear my story, but also learn how to wrestle through those questions and come up with their own plan. And some people read it and they're like, they find a way to fall back in love with what they're doing. And some people realize, you know what, it's about time I make a move. Or some people are like, now I'm finally going to go and ask for that promotion because I realize there's more in me and I need to just get out of this desk and get into the desk, a few desks over. So I love the feedback that I'm getting, that it's just sort of waking people up, getting them unstuck and getting them out of autopilot and really starting to make some like clear decisions for themselves.
Yes. And the book is called What If There's More? And I love that title because, I think that that's a question we internally, even if we vocalize it in that way or not, it's a question we all ask ourselves. And, for those of us, I know for, a lot of people, the idea of the golden handcuffs is like, boohoo, cry yourself to the bank kind of thing, but they're a real thing. A lot of people are stuck in situations where they're not happy, but they're that paycheck is hard to leave. But you had the courage to kind of take that leap, and it sounds like without a backup kind of thing. I mean, you had your husband's job and all that, but what was I guess what was what was the difference between you and somebody that might be sticking in that job that just might stay unhappy? I mean, was it a mindset thing? What was it in your DNA? How do you feel that was?
Well, I think a lot of it had to just do with my faith. That I really do believe that this is the one and only life that we're given. I think that the death of my father at 58 really affected me. And watching somebody who'd never gotten to experience one day of his retirement, he was an electrician. So he worked really, really hard his whole life. And he loved his job. He thought it was so interesting. And I remember him telling me, like, I find great satisfaction in completing the job and doing and just electricity and all of those things, And so he didn't need to be in a white collar corporate environment to really appreciate and see that what he was doing was of value. The thing that was hard to see is, that he got cancer and died 9 months later and wasn't able to see the rest of his life. And I think that really affected me because I got to a point where I was like, well, life, I like to think of life as long and the road is long, and I don't want to feel panicked about that. But at the same time, life is precious. And if I'm going to have some sort of impact in this world, then, what's the best route for me to have that impact? And it's not to say I couldn't have had it, staying at HGTV. I think I did have a great positive impact, but I had lost touch with it, Right. And so I think, the faith I had in knowing that I wouldn't lose who I was. I didn't need to put my entire identity into this corporate role. And I had people call me, and say, like, what are you doing? You're giving up the dream job. Like, you're never going to get this back. And I had some women say, you're really setting women back, saying you're just going to go home and figure your life out. And it looks like, and at that, time, my husband, had been in pastoral ministry. So it wasn't like we had a wealth cushion.
Right.
We were taking a big leap. It's not like he was like some venture capitalist. And I was like, let's just see. I'll just, whatever. We didn't have that. So it really, really was a leap of faith. It was for both of us because we had a family to support and we were, living in downtown Chicago. So it wasn't like, this was the wisest looking thing on the outside. But I think I always felt like, what? I have this massive experience. I have an amazing education and I'll figure it out. Figure it out, and it's going to look different, but that's okay. And if we have to downsize or we have to make lifestyle changes, that's okay too. And I think my faith coupled with my experience and just that grittiness of being an entrepreneur really, we didn't have to adjust. We were able to build a company together. We were able to realize traditional success again, but we just have done it differently. We just have done it, as I say in my book, based on this pursuit of significance rather than this pursuit of success.
Yeah. Pursuit of significance rather than pursuit of success. I really love that because it kind of goes back to something you said at the beginning of the interview where you talked about how we're conditioned to believe that success is measured by wealth, our prestige, all this kind of stuff. So if success is not that, what would you look at as kind of success, or is success the wrong word for it?
Yeah, I think for me, it's just redefining what you want success to look like as opposed to society, right? Yeah. Or social media, or, so it's really understanding that, again, money's not a bad thing, but when you're obsessed with it and you're only in pursuit of it, it will control your life, right? Mm-hmm. And position or title is not a bad thing. Climbing the corporate ladder or, rising up through whatever ranks you're rising up through is not a bad thing. If you want that responsibility and you want to be a leader, great. But if you're only pursuing the title to be admired, then you're off track. And today, and I see this with my own teenagers and sort of the younger generation is obsessed with likes and followers and platforms. And if your pursuit is just to be famous or just to have X number of followers, again, it is not going to satisfy you in the end. It is not the metric you need to be measuring your life by. So all of those things could be great and good in and of themselves within a proper perspective. But what you want to do is redefine success so that you're resting in the things that matter, right? So it's not about the money. It's more about the positive impact. It's not about the title. It's more about my purpose and my unique talents and gifting that I have been, uniquely designed. And can I use those things in the right, good way? And so when I start resting in those things then I can apply that to my entire life. So it's not just about work. It's also, how am I as a wife? How am I as a friend? How am I as a mother? How am I as a business person? So I'm looking at the big picture of my significance as opposed to all my success rests in this role. Our success should not at all rest in what we do. It should rest in who we are.
Nice. I love that. And this is what you help people do now in the company that you're in, the company that you've built. Is that right? Mm-hmm. So you help people kind of navigate that transition. Can you talk a little bit more about how you do that and what you do there?
Yeah. So I am an executive coach and I come alongside people and I help them answer these big questions. And I use a process called Strategic Life Map. And it's basically, kind of those tried and true strategic planning techniques that we use with our businesses. My husband does strategic planning and he is a master at it. He's been doing it for over a decade now. Coming alongside leadership teams and companies and helping them scale and grow. I'm taking those same tools and applying them to your life. But I've augmented them with a lot from my psychology background. So I've taken a lot of things that I've learned through my master's degree, and I've woven those tools throughout these, kind of traditional strategic planning tools and come up with this method of Strategic Life Map. It is the most comprehensive planning system for your life that I have seen out there. And I really help you get behind, how did I get to where I am today? What are those self-limiting beliefs or labels or generational influences I'm still wrestling with, and how are they holding me back? And then we look at how you're uniquely designed, what your, talents are, your passions are, your core values. And then we look at, your work in depth. There's a lot of exercises around really understanding what it is you love about work, you don't, where is your high productivity level, all of those things. And then we begin to craft a plan. We design a long-term vision, a short-term vision, 1-year annual goals, and some objectives for you to be working on. And so you walk away with a plan, with clarity, with confidence, with direction on what's not just the next thing you should do, but what's the best next thing you should do. Mm-hmm. And so I do this, with private coaching, we do it group coaching, and, we have online course materials. So, it's such for me, it is such my sweet spot. I know it's exactly what I should be doing. I've been doing it for years. I love hearing people's stories. I love seeing transformation and aha moments. And so it is so satisfying. And I feel like, when you look at the trajectory of my career, HGTV was definitely a fabulous experience and this shiny, lovely, amazing thing to have. But what I feel I'm doing now is like it's the perfect thing for the stage of my life with all this experience I have, the perfect mesh of corporate business career with psychology, with, executive coaching. It's just kind of all meshed together. So it's really, I feel so grateful that, I went from that scared, naked feeling the day after I left HGTV to where I am today, by the grace of God. Like I have found it, but I found it through doing this work. So I know a lot of it is, luck and blessings and all of that, but most of it is by doing the hard work of figuring this out. What am I designed to do? What is going to bring me the most joy? And so because I'm the person who experienced it, I went through this myself. I feel like that's what connects me to the people I'm helping go through it as well. It's like, I've been in your shoes. I know what it feels like.
Yeah. Oh, I love that perspective, because there's a subtle difference in talking to you that I hear that's different from when I talk to other people who may have left their jobs. And I think it might've been a timing issue. But correct me if I'm wrong, because there's still a lot of gratitude that I hear from you in your experience with HGTV and the whole thing. But, a lot of people who leave their jobs, it's kind of like it was so terrible. And, now I've found this freedom and all that kind of stuff. So is timing important on taking that leap? And what kind of questions should people ask themselves if they're kind of thinking they're not in the right place in their lives?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's a combination of timing, but it's a lot perspective. Mm-hmm. I'm always coaching people to no matter what you're feeling at work, to do the work of understanding why you feel that way. And to always understand that it's not always the company's fault or the leader's fault, that we all have a responsibility to play. And I think, when you can leave a company well and you can be grateful for the experience and the opportunity and everything you learned, because not any experience is all bad. And, just like not any experience is all great. I had really hard days at HGTV, and there were some people that I didn't like interacting with, it was all normal. It was a normal job with all its ups and downs. Yeah. But I was able to have perspective and see the good in it and be able to go after the opportunities, to find the right mentors and to be supported well. And then I made a conscious decision to leave well. I gave my bosses plenty of time. I was way up front, told them what I was wrestling through, didn't know which way I was going to go. I was super honest, and they were so appreciative. And I let them decide, how long do you want to, it was just staying true to their values, my values. And I think when you can do that and leave well, then you're going to look back. They're going to look back on you, fabulously. You're going to look back on them. And so if you're feeling stuck right now and you don't like your job, you're not alone, right? But I would just say, okay, first let me figure out, is there something else I can do here? It's always easier to stay where you are than to leave. Mm-hmm. So do that work of understanding, is this more about me? Is this about them? Is it just one person, or is it the whole job? Is it the industry? Is it the field I'm in? Am I not really gifted for this type of work? Is it because I took a leadership job? I don't really like leadership. I like being an individual contributor more. So when you're doing that work of really wrestling through these questions, you can make really wise decisions about whether you just need to redesign where you are or leave and do something different. And I think, sometimes we just don't give enough time to figure that out. And I do think younger generations, they feel very empowered to switch jobs often. And that's great that there's choices and availability, but I do think you're robbing yourself of an opportunity to really know if this is the place for you. You're not going to figure that out in 5 minutes or a year or whatever. You really have to allow yourself to grow and to fail and to succeed and to have people give you feedback and to wrestle through what that even feels like. It's hard sometimes, it's good sometimes, So if you don't rest in a place long enough, you're not going to really understand who you are and what you want.
Yeah, I like that perspective. That's not when you hear that a lot. You hear a lot of just chase your passions, take the leaps of faith, which are great messages. But I really like that perspective of where you're at. It's easier to kind of make the change if there's something you could find in there that is better for you or something like that. because, maybe subtle changes. So those are important questions to get some self-awareness on. And I know that there can be a lot of, and you mentioned, one of the things you mentioned is you talk about how you deal with the anxiety of leaving or making those changes, making that change and embracing the adventure. This kind of stuck out to me because I embrace the idea that adventure is an antidote to anxiety. Can you expand on what you mean by that?
Yeah, I think, it's always scary. Any change is scary for people, right? Because you don't know what the outcome's going to be. That's really what the fear is. If you're going to be successful in your next change or whatever the leap you want to make, then where's the fear, right? But if you don't know how it's going to turn out, then there is a lot of anxiety and fear around it. And anxiety is really the emotion we feel around stress, a stressor. Mm-hmm. So, when you're dealing with stress, you need to identify what's stressing you, and then you need to address those things, right? Because you're either going to fight, flight, or freeze, right? So we look at those stressors. Even if you've addressed the stress, if you still feel anxious, that's the emotion you're carrying. That's your responsibility. Mm-hmm. So if you're going to make a change, you have to deal with the fact that you don't have 100% control over everything. So you're going to have to kind of let go and take the leap and turn it in, like you say, into an adventure and say, you know what, this might not work out, but at least I'm trying. And if it doesn't work out, I can reevaluate and plan again. But if you do the work, this is why I love the process of Strategic Life Map. If you do the work and you do it well, you're a horse I'm going to bet on, because that means you figured out. You're not making a hasty decision. You're not just going for the shiny toy. You really are saying and asking yourself the right questions to figure out if this is the best thing for you, or if you're just dreaming. If this is just a daydream, or if this is something that's real that you can go after and realize, success and significance in.
Yeah. And what if it doesn't work out? I know that's a lot of questions like that people have. What if it doesn't work out? How would you respond to someone who might have asked that?
Well, I feel like I coach so many business owners that have dealt with disappointment, and there's no successful entrepreneur out there that hasn't experienced some sort of failure. And if it doesn't work out, think of it as a learning opportunity. What did I do right? And what did I did wrong? And what were the things that weren't in my control, but I have to pay attention to? Because whether it was the climate was wrong, the idea was wrong, the reception was wrong, the marketing was what was it? And how can I refine that? And then what can I learn as far as, was that the right fit for me? And then, go back and try again. The great entrepreneurs persevere. They have grit. And grit is not about smarts. Grit is about persevering.
Failure is not final, as the phrase goes. That's great. And I before I let you go, I want to get into your book a little bit and kind of ask you a little bit about what that's about, because it's about your journey and some of the things you steps you took and really helping other entrepreneurs, leaders, and people ask the question, really, what if there's more? Can you tell us a little bit about what you're hoping to convey through the book and just give us a little on it?
Yeah. So my hope was to just get the message out there. What was one way that I could really share this experience with as many people as I could, and share a little bit of the process with as many people as I could. And so writing a book was always a dream of mine. It was one I talked about for 10 years, and then as soon as I hit 50, my husband was like, please stop talking about the book and write the book because you've been talking about it for 10 years. And so I'm glad I waited to write it, though, because I needed all that life experience. I needed to really be able to have experienced the ups and downs of everything I had gone through and processed and thought about it and reflected before I wrote. And it, took me 2 solid years at a desk writing it. So it's no easy feat. And so I always say I should have a stamp on my book that was like, this was pre-ChatGPT. Like there were
Right.
no tools like that out there to help me whatsoever. So this is really from my heart. It's my journey. It's my feelings. And I love how it turned out. And I love the response I'm getting, that I'm meeting people that are exactly where I was. And there's so many people out there just that are struggling and want a better life. And they really want to figure it out, but they don't know how or if this process would work. So it's great that I can share that with them. And then, after writing the book, so many people were like, are you making this a course? Do you have a course? Can I take a course? How can I do this with you? And so I'm only one person. So, it's hard to do one-on-one all the time. So creating a course, teaching, doing the videos and intertwining coaching in there, whether that's with the group or private, has just been the best decision ever. So it's been great going through the process with now more people can have access to it. So it's been super fun.
Yeah. And the course is the Strategic Life Map Academy. And and it's a six week course, right?
Yes.
You kind of, and a cohort. And I believe the next one is going on this fall, correct?
Right. Yes.
So you want to share a little bit about that?
Yeah. So there's a couple ways you can experience it. One of the most popular ways is through the group coaching, and the next cohort is launching at the end of September. And so anybody who's listening to your podcast, just to kind of reward your fabulous audience, they can follow me on Instagram at Traci S. Barrett. And if you follow me on Instagram, you can just DM me Adam Hill and I will send you a discount code.
Excellent.
So I just want everybody to have the opportunity. So if you're listening to this and you're interested and resonates with you, just, follow me on Instagram and put Adam's name in there and I'll send you a code back.
I love that. That's so generous of you. Thank you. And because I know that a lot of people struggle with this, and you have so much vast experience, and I have so many more questions for you. And this is just one of those interviews where we could go so deep, and we've only scratched the surface. But I am grateful for your time and your energy and what you do for the world. The fact that you've chosen to find this purpose, this mission, and help other people to find theirs and pursue it. That's how we make the world better. And the book is called What If There's More? Please check it out. You can find it on Amazon. And the course is the Strategic Life Map. As Traci says, find her at Instagram on Traci S. Barrett. And DM my name, Adam Hill. It's easy to spell, so you won't forget it. And you'll get the discount code. Is there anywhere else that people can find you, Traci?
They can find me at TraciSchubertBarrett.com. Super easy. So if you want to see my website and learn a bit more about me, a bit more about my story, you can find the book there, which is available everywhere, and learn more about the course offerings. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. This was an absolute pleasure. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And to everybody out there, thank you so much for being here. And we will see you next time. Hey, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to the Flow Over Fear podcast. If you'd like to learn more about getting into flow and learn the foundations of flow, I have a free video series on my website at www.adamcliffordhill.com called The Foundations of Flow. Feel free to go there and download it and start your journey to rising above fear and achieving greater flow in your life. And if you like this episode, and I'm guessing you did if you stuck around for this long, then please do me a favor and hit the subscribe button, and you will receive notifications when I have new interviews, new recaps, and new trainings that pop up on YouTube. Thanks again for joining us.